Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
Avatar Meher
Uh,
Baba. Okay.
yeah, let's
Sorry.
start with the how to love God, and then we'll set the tone. Yeah,
Yes,
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. How to love God. To love God in the most practical way is to love our fellow beings. If we feel for others in the same way as we feel for our dear ones, we love God. 1. If instead of seeing faults in others, we look within ourselves, we are loving God. 2. If instead of robbing others to help ourselves, we rob ourselves to help others, we are loving God. 3. If we suffer in the suffering of others and feel happy in the happiness of others, we are loving God. 4. If instead of worrying over our own misfortunes, we think of ourselves more fortunate than many, many others, we are loving God. 5. If we endure our lot with patience and contentment, accepting it as His will, we are loving God. 6. If we understand and feel that the greatest act of devotion and worship to God is not to harm or hurt any of His beings, we are loving God. 7. To love God as He ought to be loved, we must live for God and die for God, knowing that the goal of all life is to love God and find Him as our own self. Avatar Meher Baba ki jai.
Okay, so good to have everybody back. And I think Sunil and Ashok, you missed Silence Day. I think as the years go by, people are coming in bigger numbers to uh, Mehrabad, and I lucked out. I had my room to myself, though they warned me that somebody will be assigned, and there was another bed in my single room. But I lucked out. I think Baba wanted to pamper me, so I had the room to myself right through the 4 days. Then I continued to be traveling, so I came to Bangalore. Day later, Mysore. Now I'm in Coorg. So,
If
uh,
Karthik, so
huh,
be it, and it was God's wish. If I had come, and if probably I would have shared the room with you.
maybe, yeah. And that would have been great. I think we stayed together in Goa, right?
Yeah, in Goa and also in Nagar.
Nagar. Yeah. Ah, yes, correct. Yes. Excellent. So, just to wrap up what we saw in Mehrabad, just to give some insights on what's happening. Well, I think a lot more good news on every front, right? Now there's digital payments available in MPR. The food has gotten spicier. It's more Indianized, I think. But with that comes a lot more crowd. The presence of Baba was overpowering everywhere. We had a great visit to Meherazad, and we really nice. I mean, even Sanjay was able to make it, though he just left for Bombay from there. I think the biggest takeaways from me on this trip was, yeah, I think slowly but surely the numbers are swelling, right? And I think soon we will have all year availability of accommodation and pilgrim visits being allowed and so on and so forth. And I think the water scene also must have improved because, yeah, I think it was green, and I think the rains were timely or better than usual because it was green all over, and we had some great weather all 4 days. A bit sticky in the day, very mildly so, but gorgeous nights, gorgeous early mornings. So I had a great time. We did 2 attempts at cleaning. I think Nomita got a good chance on the one day she tried. So all is well. Any other thoughts that I missed out, Sanjay ji?
Yeah, I think you covered well. Yeah.
Okay, good.
But yes, lot of rush. Yes, it was like mini Amartiti, at least an hour plus for the
Correct.
darshan.
For darshan, yeah.
Yeah, at least an hour plus. Yeah.
So which was very rare in usual silence days. But yeah, but I think as we discussed, maybe it's very good. So with that, let's get to um, ones.
Thank you. Thanks, Karthik, for sharing. Jagava, we definitely missed it. Maybe next time.
Ah, you're in
Oh,
Annapurna
I think
or you're
it's
in Little India with
Thank you,
in one of the
Karthik, for
restaurants in
sharing.
Little India. Let me guess. Ah,
Wow.
filter
oh,
coffee.
coffee,
Wow.
coffee, coffee.
Coffee.
Coffee going on.
Excellent.
Yes. Yeah, yeah,
This deserves some sharing as well. So
yeah.
I'm
Wow.
I, I'm in the midst of greenery. I came and sat out because I didn't want to disturb Nandini who's still sleeping. There's the pool. There's all the greenery, and here I am.
Wow. They're all green.
Absolutely
Nice.
green.
Where is
This is Coorg, Kodagu, Mysore ke paas.
very good.
So is this Komalas you're at, Sunil?
No, this is Madhura's Villas. I think it's newly opened,
Okay.
right opposite Pekka.
Oh, okay.
Something.
Closer to the beginning of the road.
Yes, on the what road is it? Buffalo Road or something.
Yeah. Jai Baba, Jai Baba.
Yes. Uh, we have Nomita ji as well. Wow.
Yes, yes. So let's just trying to get started. 269 is where we stopped, but I know we got into a little social, which is fine. So, what's for breakfast?
Just coffee so far.
Really boring. Okay, okay. We I mean, it's still early in the day here, so we came yesterday.
Okay. Lovely.
All right
Okay.
then. So I will switch off cameras and then. Are you able to see my screen? No. Now you can. So we stopped at 269, page 269. If you go to Trello, that's where we were. So if you see 237 to 269 is what we read on the 2nd of July. So, and we didn't read last weekend. And here we are trying to continue from that point on. Only thing I wanted to check was before we go to that, there's a the Glow article. Shall we quickly read that? It might actually take us quite a bit, maybe 20-30 minutes, but then I think it might be worth reading this article given that we were discussing about this. Yeah, it's okay to do
Absolutely.
that. And okay, so who wants to read? I can read too, but if anybody wants to read,
Nothing
yeah,
on the
we can.
screen at the moment, Karthik.
Oh, sorry,
Nothing
sorry,
on the
sorry,
screen.
sorry, sorry, sorry. So this is something Sanjay ji shared. It's from the Glow. It's a few pages about the founding of Meher Spiritual Center. By the way, coincidentally, the book I was reading, which you might have seen me holding all around Mehrabad, Sanjay and Nomita ji, was a book by Darwin Shaw. And Darwin Shaw was one of the people from Schenectady, upstate New York, who came to Baba and tasked with a lot of operational tasks around the setting up of the center. So he and his wife actually lived on the center long before it became ready. And then he did a lot of work in the operationalization of the center with Davy, Kitty Davy and Elizabeth. But so it's very coincidental, but it was so touching. I even shared a few paras, right? So of Darwin's experiences. So he was a born Catholic, very close to Christ, and very simple, humble background. He was basically a painter of signs. So he used to paint road signs, traffic signs, and road signs on the road. And he became part of the police establishment in a small town called Schenectady, which is upstate New York. And then he got drawn to Baba through a series of experiences, starting with a little brochure that he saw about Baba. So it's fascinating. Unfortunately, I couldn't finish the book, but I finished 30-40% of it, and I hope to get back to it when we when I get the next chance. So yeah, so who wants to read?
Karthik, I think it's best that you read 1 or 2 pages.
Okay, sure. No problem.
Yeah.
So
Is it
let's get
okay with
started.
you, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. As
Yeah,
long
because
as
you
I'm
are
not
away from home. Yeah, that's why I asked.
no, 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 I'm okay. I'm totally okay. But
Okay.
I set myself up to be comfortable. Yeah. So great. So I'll start reading. For the first time, the founding of Meher Spiritual Center, a brief history, and published an unpublished account by Kitty Davy. Editor's note: the following excerpts of the founding of Meher Spiritual Center was compiled by Kitty Davy in the years between Meher Baba's last stay at the center in 1958 and the end of 1960. During that time, Kitty was living with Elizabeth Patterson at Yukon Dunes, Elizabeth's family home in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Beginning in 1952, when Meher Baba directed Kitty to remain in Myrtle Beach to help Elizabeth and Norina Machiavelli until her passing in 1991, Kitty was central to the work of Meher Center. She helped guide the maintenance of the cabins and grounds, and in her later years met daily with the many pilgrims and visitors who came from across the world to experience the unique atmosphere of Meher Baba's love at the center. Although the following manuscript was never published, Kitty adapted small portions of it for her book Love Alone Prevails, published in 1981. In the earliest draft of the manuscript, Elizabeth provided corrections and additions, ensuring that this account would be an accurate overview of the work she and Norina did to develop the center. This version has been edited for style and coherence. Several letters from Elizabeth to her parents have been omitted from the original manuscript. By the way, the editor of Glow is Naushirwan Nalawala, living in Princeton, New Jersey. Uh, okay, so how does this work? Oh, okay, and then it continues like this. Okay, I thought there was something. Meher Spiritual Center is a place where people come at a turning point in their lives. It is like a silent sea, counterpoint to the frenzied and as fractured world outside, as clear as the calmness that accompanies love. Coming to the center is like being on a furlough from war, only to return to the front, no longer fighting mad. The photograph, Meher Baba with Elizabeth Patterson and seekers at the 1956 Darshan at Myrtle Beach. This is from the Shaw family collection. Shaw is just the person that I mentioned, Nancy and Darwin Shaw. So fighting mad is
You have to
where we
go up the
stop.
column, right
Yeah, yeah,
top,
yeah, yeah,
right
yeah,
top.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Interested anew in the things one used to like to do. Fast taking soldiers quick step, perhaps at the peak of their performance, into the center, turning their attention to the rising new voice in their hearts. This marks the beginning of a reorientation inside, where the one time fruitful feelings of disenchantment and frustration slowly go, being seen only as the fuel that was necessary to bring them to this juncture of the journey. Moving into the surrounding area of the center are people from all over the country, estranged from the meaning of their old life patterns They come craving the warmth, goodness, and spiritual food they feel they can find here. No matter their physical ages, they come as children seeking a reconnection with God and Mother Earth. Found here are the people who are trying to live in a new way, thinking of others instead of themselves, people who have been awakened by Meher Baba's love, learning to live together despite the superficial differences of their backgrounds and interests. Not a perfect community, but one that functions with the sense of family, enforcing the unity of God they feel within all. The new people coming into the center are like babes, finally cutting their cord with the Mayavic Coney Island of the world, joining into the flow of the new spirit of the age. This place, what is it? The story of Meher Spiritual Center is the remarkable tale of the great pioneer work undertaken by devoted followers of Meher Baba in June 1941. Elizabeth Patterson and Norina Machabelli were sent back to the United States from India to find a suitable location for a spiritual center for Meher Baba in the West. Two of the specifications were that it be on virgin land and had to be given from the heart. Many letters were written by Elizabeth Patterson are included in the account, giving us an idea of the tremendous effort it took to accomplish this work. As described in a letter to Kitty Davy, it is only by reading all these letters of Elizabeth's to her father, her deep concern, her faithfulness to what Baba had requested, and her ability to overcome obstacles which could have stopped many of us, and the inspiration and energy with which she carried out Baba's wish together, throughout with her co-worker Norina Machabali, can we know and feel these things. They should be inspiring to all of us. There are lessons in all the correspondence, lessons on a common down to earth level, which we all need. Elizabeth's letters are full of this simplicity, love, sincerity, hard work, steadfastness, and faith. There are some photographs. This is the first known explorer to reconnoiter. Thank you. What's his name? William Dawkins for the word. The section of Long Bay, now known as Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, in 1526 was a Spaniard, Lucas Vasque de Allion, in the public domain. Okay. And then there's a Frenchman, Marquis de Lafayette, journeyed through the King's Highway that runs through Meher Center in 1777, following his landing at North Island near the mouth of the Wakamal when he first came to America to champion the cause of liberty in the public domain. So again, both of these, I mean, I think let's just quickly see it on, might be worth uh, showing you the location. It's almost at close to Florida, right? Yeah, so that's where Myrtle Beach is. But to give you context, Myrtle Beach is there, closer to Charlotte, Atlanta, and there are two Carolinas. This is the southern of the Carolinas, South Carolina. And let's actually see the center. There it is, North Kings Highway that we just read about. So this whole property up to here, right? And in fact, Briarcliff Acres are the next property that's mentioned in the book as well. I'm sure we may come across even in this title. So what happens is the green marked out area that you see here, I think, is the entire property. There were 800 acres to start with. It became Baba asked 300 to be sold away. So now there's roughly 500 acres with three lakes and a beachfront. So there's a private beach from here to here that's available on the property. And again, that's part of the same location. Just context, I thought might be useful. Yeah, so let's continue. Early history of Myrtle Beach. A link seems to exist between early history and what was to become the Meher Center property. There must have been roaming tribes of American Indians coming to the lakes to hunt and fish, for the remains of temporary campsites are still discernible, and with a little digging, broken pottery and shards are found. When the little lagoon was dredged prior to putting up the bridge that Meher Baba walked across so many times, an Indian implement and two different early periods of broken pottery were unearthed. Sorry. Across US Highway 17, near the waterway, were found dinosaur bones. Possibly these prehistoric mammals were trapped in a bog, and a variety of very large oyster shells show that once the sea had stretched that far inland. So again, just to show you that, Highway 17, actually the King's Highway is the old one, and Highway 17 is where the property is on now. Anyway, that doesn't matter. Let's not waste time. Yeah. Uh, and that far inland, that's where we were. So go to the top again. The first known explorer to reconnoiter the section of Long Bay, now known as Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, was a Spaniard, Lucas Vasquez de Ayllon, who in the year 1526 anchored off present-day Wilmington, North Carolina, and dispatched a part of his company overland to the south. Proceeding along the Carolina coast, they rejoined the ship at the mouth of the Waccamaw River, which runs through Conway, and de Ayllon established a short-lived colony in the vicinity of present-day Georgetown, South Carolina. More than 100 years later, in 1638, Deacon Samuel Chapin arrived in another region of the New World, led by that inward light that filled the early pilgrim fathers who loved their country, who, loving their country, loved God and their religion more. Chapin sailed from the old country with other Puritans and settled in Massachusetts Bay Colony seeking religious freedom. The Chapin family became largely connected with the city of Springfield, Massachusetts, and Samuel Chapin was at various times selectman magistrate and assessor of tax, as well as deacon and preacher at Sabbath services. For 30 years, he was their leader, watched over their morals, guarded their health, and enacted their public measures. He did not achieve renown for any spectacular work like a military leader. He achieved it because he shouldered and bore the humdrum responsibilities and care of civil and church government and sought no favor in return. Of the numerous descendant families, 7,500 families, scattered over the country, Simeon Brooks Chapin, born in Milwaukee, Wisconsin on May 30th, would play a central role in the development of Myrtle Beach. He established stockbroker businesses in Chicago and New York and fathered four children, the second of whom, Elizabeth Chapin, would be co-founder of Meher Center north of Myrtle Beach. The King's Highway, which runs through Meher Center property, is an ancient road formerly much traveled by stagecoach and horse in going south and north, in probably an original Indian trail, and traces of it remain weaving along the forest coastline of Myrtle Beach. The Marquis de Lafayette journeyed through this section in 1777, following his landing at North Island near the mouth of the Waccamaw, when he first came to America to champion the cause of liberty. Traveling along the King's Highway, President George Washington recorded this description in his diary of his southern tour in April 1791. Thursday, 28, Mr. Vereen piloted us across the Schwash, Singletons, on the long beach of the ocean, and it being the proper time of tide, passed along it with ease to the place of quitting it about 16 miles. These statements indicate that Washington, after being elected the first president of the United States of America, on his way to Charleston must have ridden over the wide strand of Long Beach. The old Vereen plantation was somewhat north of where Meher Center is now located. Near the turn of the century, the Burroughs family of nearby Conway, who began lumbering, turpentine, and farming operations, consolidated the lands that had once been the Withers plantation, together with several other timber properties. These enterprises involved building a tramway between Conway and Myrtle Beach, plus houses for employees along the way. Along the beach, a pavilion and family hotel, the Seaside, was built, later called Lafayette Manor, where many stayed on Meher Baba's first visit to Myrtle Beach in 1952. The coincidences are too many. So Lafayette Manor is where Darwin Shaw met Meher Baba at on his visit to Myrtle Beach, and in fact, they hang out in the lobby just to get a glimpse of him. And Baba tells him to come and meet him. So, though he was expected to meet people only the next day, so it's a nice book. I really liked it. There were only 5 family summer residences in 1911 when Mr. Simeon B. Chapin came down from New York on a duck hunting trip. Being a man of foresight, he immediately recognized the unique potentialities of the broad strand and the evergreen forests with Myrtle Beach situated in the of center of a long crescent-shaped beach, acting with characteristic promptness together with Edwin and D.W. Burroughs and James Bryan Sr. of Conway. He formed the Myrtle Beach Farms Company, a corporation for the development of the 65,000-acre tract. The old commissary on the farm road was the only place of supply, and anticipating the needs of a future community at Myrtle Beach, a complete store was built and incorporated as Shopping Company, comprised of these same gentlemen. The early modern phase of Myrtle Beach was stimulated by John T. Woodside of Greenville, South Carolina, who built the towering 9-story Ocean Forest Hotel, opened in 1929 when there was nothing but one-story houses, and who developed the Pine Lakes Golf Course and the beautiful Ocean Forest residential section. About this time, the present US Highway 17 was completed, linking New York and Miami in an ocean highway and traversing Myrtle Beach about midway between these cities. Soon to follow were other hotels, and dotted along the 20 miles of highway of Myrtle Beach were the attractive motor courts that became nationally known. In 1931, during Meher Baba's first visit to America, something happened in Myrtle Beach which had an enormous influence and bearing on this particular property that was destined to become one of Meher Baba's centers in the United States. If it had not been for the foresight of one man, Mr. Woodside, there might never have been the center property as we know it today. Many years ago, the Old Kings Highway was the only highway connecting from north to south, Philadelphia to Charleston, South Carolina. This ran through the lakes section or very close to it. It was only natural that as Myrtle Beach developed into a popular holiday resort, the highway would have to be made suitable for heavier and larger trucks and other traffic. Previously, the Old Kings Highway that ran through the untouched section bordering on the freshwater lakes about 8 miles north of Myrtle Beach was a narrow tract, uneven, suitable only for horse and wagon traffic as used in the time of Washington. Mr. Woodside realized that if the Old Kings Highway, which ran so close to the 7 freshwater lakes, was to be developed and enlarged, as would be the case with a wide US 17 running so close, the whole of the lake property would be spoiled and further development of it hampered. Therefore, he paid the additional mileage cost of $29,000 to have Highway 17 from the Dunes Club to 4 miles south of the center take a more westerly curve adjacent to the inland waterway property along where it is today. This was done none too soon, for there were already plans to make the new highway the four-lane thoroughfare it is today. An exchange of land was made, which left the old road running through the woods as it was untouched. Therefore, the center property as we see it today remained intact with its 2 beautiful freshwater lakes on the southeast side of the Old Kings Highway and the undeveloped forest on the other, with the US 17 located more than a mile to the northwest of the lakes. There was a photograph, so let's see the photograph and read about it here. This is along the beach, a pavilion and family hotel. The seaside was built, later called Lafayette Manor. Oh, this is the Lafayette Manor, okay. Where many visitors stayed on Meher Baba's first visit to Myrtle Beach in 1952, the public domain. And there's another photograph here. Washington Southern Tour, we read about it in the previous page. On April 27, 1791, President George Washington spent the night nearby at the indigo plantation of Jeremiah Vereen, the Vereen plantation. He wrote in his diary that he was entertained, and very kindly, without being able to make compensation. The next day, Vereen guided Washington across Lewis Swash, now Singleton Swash, and on to the Strand at Long Bay, now Myrtle Beach. Okay. Eventually, I continue reading. Eventually, because of financial difficulties due to the depression in the USA, Mr. Woodside lost his property to foreclosure. Eventually, it was repossessed by the Myrtle Beach Farms Company. Thus, it came about that Simeon Chopin, along with the two Burroughs brothers as partners, acquired this property just about the time that Meher Baba first mentioned his desire for a center in America. Finding the center. When Elizabeth Patterson and Norina Machabali returned to the United States from India in 1941, an important task lay before them. Meher Baba had sent them to locate a site for his spiritual center somewhere in the United States, one that would comply with 5 conditions he had set forth. After considerable search over a period of 3 years, the property, now known as Meher Spiritual Center, comprising 500 acres and 2 freshwater lakes adjacent to the ocean, came into Elizabeth's possession. It was the combination of diligent perseverance plus following Baba's 5 clues that finally located it. When found, she, of course, got sanction from Baba in India before obtaining the property for the center. This large property, a virgin forest, was undeveloped and uncultivated by man, and at this time had only one narrow sandy road or trail that ran through this wood. This was the road historically known as the Old King's Highway, used by George Washington and previously Lafayette when while en route by private stagecoach or on horseback from Charleston to Philadelphia, the then capital city. The creation of the Meher Spiritual Center was foretold and described by Meher Baba in 1941 when Elizabeth and Norina were both staying in India with Meher Baba at his headquarters in Mehrabad. Baba moved from place to place according to his spiritual work of the moment. At this time, they were with Baba in Ajmer. 10 years previously, during Baba's initial visit to the West, he had mentioned that in the future he would have 5 spiritual centers in America, such as he was already planning in different parts of India. As he spoke of the future center in the United States to be located by Elizabeth and Norina, he laid down 5 specific conditions for the spot to be selected by them: that the climate should be equable and suitable for both Easterners and Westerners. So, just for the record, Myrtle Beach does not get snow in the winter. It gets cold, but doesn't get snow. 2, that it should have ample water. It has both groundwater sources and it's by the beach and it has these lakes. Number 3, that it should be on virgin soil. So it should not have been exploited for any commercial purpose. And this entire area was not, except those probably the Indians that were hunting or fishing in the lakes, which I had not heard before. Other than that, it has not been actually exploited commercially. Number 4, that the soil should be fertile enough to support many people if need be. So it should be capable of a lot of agriculture, and Myrtle Beach is full of fauna. It's all kinds of trees grow there. 5, that it should be given from the heart. Now, this is the tricky part, which even Elizabeth didn't understand when it was first told to her. Elizabeth said it had to be given from the heart. I mean, Baba said it had to come from the heart. He obviously knew what he's going to get when he gave these conditions. But finally, it was a gift, uh, which was literally free, because Elizabeth's father bequeathed this to Elizabeth and out of time before he died, because Elizabeth requested, saying, "This is the land I'd consider for Baba." And Baba met, I believe, Elizabeth's father, and he was also he was not a Baba lover, but he was pretty sympathetic and sensitive to Baba. So he agreed instantly and made the grant in his lifetime. And it came without too much of negotiation or thinking. So it was really a spontaneous gift from the heart. So it's amazing how Baba works with these rules and conditions, right? And all of this with letters going back and forth, right? I'll just pause here. Any thoughts? Any
Yeah, it's
reactions?
amazing, amazing reading. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I'll continue.
I mean, the detailing that has been done here is really great. Yeah, Baba.
Actually, there was a lot more in that book too. It's amazing, amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I'll continue. With only these primary conditions as indicators, Baba sent Elizabeth and Norina back to New York from India for this work to set out and find the ideal spot for his center, a spot, no doubt, which Baba, who lives simultaneously in the past, present, and future, had already visualized and selected long before Elizabeth and Norina started on their quest. In 1934, some years before the exchange with Baba in Ajmer, Elizabeth, who was then living with her husband Kenneth in New York City, visited Myrtle Beach. Uh, is my screen being shared? Yeah, sorry. For some reason,
Yeah, this is visible. Your screen is okay. Yeah.
okay. Uh, yeah, in 1934, some years before the exchange with Baba in Ajmer, Elizabeth, who was then living with her husband Kenneth in New York City, visited Myrtle Beach for the first time and saw the beautiful Seven Lakes area. She remarked to her father that she did not care so much for Myrtle Beach itself. So that's what's happening. I'm not able to.
It's not scrolling.
Yeah, yeah, maybe it's back now. Yes, yeah, now it's back.
Don't
She
worry.
remarked to her.
Baba's wish.
Yeah.
This is Baba's wish.
Now it's working. It's working. It's back to working. Yeah. She remarked to her father that she did not care so much for Myrtle Beach itself as it was then, but that this wilderness north of the town was most beautiful. In an excerpt from a letter to Norina, Elizabeth describes her first impressions of the land that was to become Meher Center. This is from the letter. Kenneth and I are south for Easter this Easter week with father, and we motored over to his place in South Carolina, where I have never been before. The beautiful beach reminded me of our ocean and dunes where we tented out. Only they extend here for 35 miles instead of 15. I did not care for the inhabited portion of Myrtle Beach, only the wild stretches without homes. One place especially was fascinating, with 7 freshwater lakes within sight of the ocean. Most unusual, having freshwater lakes so close to the salt ocean. The dunes here have more underbrush and trees than the Pacific dunes, and the lakes have myrtle and other bushes dipping right into them from the edge. Many birds
Dunes exactly
ducks.
means what actually? Grammatically, sorry to interrupt.
Uh,
Dunes
yeah, sure.
means
Dunes, I think it's the same as sand dunes. So basically, sandy portions of the beach.
okay.
So there's the reason you ask probably is there's another property in Myrtle Beach where Baba actually spent weeks recovering from the accident. So he didn't stay at the center when he came back from the accident. He stayed at a property which was again Elizabeth's father's, which was
Okay.
called Yupon Dunes. That property was called Yupon Dunes. Today, that has been acquired and is the private property but available for Baba work of the Sufis. It's about
Okay.
10 miles from Myrtle Beach, I mean, from the center.
Okay.
But it's a large house. It's a very large house with 5, 6 bedrooms and huge. It's a huge property.
Okay.
Yeah.
Continue. Yes.
Any reason that Baba didn't stay at Myrtle Beach after the accident?
Uh,
Sunil is saying something.
so
You have to be
yeah,
louder,
I heard it.
Sunil.
I heard it. I heard it in between the South Indian music that's playing in the background. To answer Sunil's question, there's no specific reason given why he chose Yukon Dunes, but we have to remember that in Myrtle Beach there are only cabins, right? So that's not really comfortable for a person who was literally going to be confined to the bed and who needed assistance all around him. This house, when Baba asked for it, he actually said there will be a special use of it in quotes. Okay. And nobody understood at that time. And Darwin mentions it in the book that I was reading that later they figured out this is the special use he was going to put the house to. Right. So that's a little tidbit. Yeah. But he was staying with Mehra and the Gohar and all the people
Money.
that were with him in the accident. And they just came back and he was in that house on the second floor. That's what, and it had an elevator. So he had thought of everything, right? Baba being Baba. So in a house like this, which is a country manor, it had an elevator and he was on the second floor with an ability for a doctor to be next door, right? So He had thought
I
of
see.
everything.
And this accident we're talking about is Oklahoma,
Yes, Prague, Oklahoma, 1952.
but that's very far from Myrtle Beach, right?
Yes.
So
So what
after
happened was
accident,
he spent
yeah.
2 weeks in Oklahoma, and
The
then
Mm-hmm.
for
hospital he was
recovery
there,
he
right?
came back. Yeah, he stayed in the
Yeah.
hospital itself for 2 weeks, and
I
when he
see.
was ready to go, and when he needed
Mm-hmm.
further recuperation, he chose
I see.
Yukon Dunes,
I see.
and he left US a good 6 weeks after that.
I see. And I had another question. What is Myrtle?
Myrtle is a bush. Actually, I was thinking we can show you that. It's basically
Mm.
a
Bush,
name of a
kind
tree.
of a bush.
Yeah, yeah, name of a tree. Yeah, there it is.
I
So
see.
it grows in the wild.
So
But Myrtle Beach
flowery
by
tree.
itself is, yeah, it also has flowers. But Myrtle Beach is today known as a golf resort. So if you talk to a non-Baba person and say Myrtle Beach, the instant association is golf, right?
But
And
it
the
can be a
better
Baba
weather
person
in winter.
also. I
What's
also
that?
play golf. I love to play golf.
Oh, really? Lovely. So it's one of the best resorts. So if you're a New Yorker or a person
Mhm.
living in DC and a golfer,
Yeah.
you'd love to go to Myrtle Beach when you get the chance because it's got the
Okay.
best greens.
Yeah.
So
I remember
and it's
Clinton holidaying in Myrtle Beach, right? That was the news that time when he was president. Bill
yeah, he
I
Clinton.
was a
see.
golfer, avid golfer. I didn't know that
Yeah.
he holidayed in Myrtle Beach. Interesting.
Yeah. Bill Clinton holidaying in Myrtle Beach was the news.
Okay,
So,
okay, okay.
so Baba is giving me some stops to visit.
Very interesting.
I
You
missed it
should, you
last
should.
time. We were
Yeah.
thinking of it all the time during the trip, but every day we were thinking, can we go tomorrow morning? Can we go tomorrow morning? But somehow it
No,
didn't
no,
happen.
I would say don't
Yeah.
plan anything less than 3 days. And
Yeah.
Sanjay ji, again, don't miss it.
At
Yeah.
Next
one
year.
point,
But
we thought we'll
fortunately,
go in the
Shashwat could
morning, and
make it in March. Shashwat went
Great.
there in March with his friends. Yeah.
Yes, you mentioned.
He drove down
Sunil,
from
you were saying
Atlanta.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was I was saying I was getting so desperate because we didn't have time in between. I was telling Nomita we drive in the morning, come back in the evening. Then finally we said doesn't make sense. 6 hours
Yeah.
up, 6 hours down, and we
Yeah.
wouldn't get to see
It was
anything. So we dropped it.
it will happen when Baba wants it. But I have a
We'll
suggestion.
all go together.
We all go together.
Yes.
Ashokji, we'll all go
Insha
together
Baba.
next year.
We all go together.
Insha
Yeah.
Baba.
Jai
Baba
Baba.
wants that.
Certainly.
Jai
Jai
Baba.
Baba.
So we'll all attend Shashwat's convocation. How about that?
Okay, yes.
Why
Jai
not?
Baba.
Yeah.
We'll time it
Where is
around
that?
that. Yeah.
Yes, yes. Jai
Absolutely.
Baba.
Anyway, that's Atlanta.
Jai
So
Baba.
we wish him and then drive down to Myrtle Beach.
Yes,
Myrtle
yes.
Beach.
Jai Baba.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
Jai Baba.
All right. So let's continue. Yeah. So the dunes here have more underbrush and trees than the Pacific dunes, and the lakes have myrtle and other bushes dipping right into them from the edge. Many birds were there, ducks and other game, and I saw one blue heron. They say deer are in the woods and come to drink in the lakes. No one lives here as it is a preserve for shooting. Can you imagine? But fortunately, only in season, and the rest of the time, the wildlife is protected. But the reason I'm telling you all this is because I kept thinking all the time of you and me camping out of season in this paradise. It is superb for pitching our tent on any beautiful lake. The freedom and beauty of it all is most appealing after a long winter in the city. Talking of hunting, seasonal hunting is permitted in most preserves in the US. And the reason is if they don't do the hunting every year, or if they don't allow controlled hunting every year, the population of these animals goes up. So moose become too many moose, and so on and so forth. So they
Yeah, yeah.
actually encourage hunting in many states, even in the wildlife preserves. And this, of course, she's talking 50 years back, but this tradition continues even today. So guns and shooting are something that's part of American culture for good or bad. Yeah. Let's see the photograph. And this is More than 100 years later, in 1638, Deacon Samuel Chopin arrived in another region of the New World, led by that inward light that filled the early pilgrim fathers who, loving their country, loved God and their religion more. Chopin sailed from the old country with other Puritans, settled in Massachusetts Bay Colony, seeking religious freedom. This is already, the text was already there above. So this is Chopin. Okay. At that time, now the letter ends, and now we get back to the notes. At that time, there had been no thought of a center, nor even later, when Baba discussed a center site in the United States, did Elizabeth ever think of it as in any way a suitable spot for center. The thought just never occurred to her. She and Marina had previously gone on a motor trip out west, and they were rather inclined towards the west coast of the United States. Beginning in 1941, Elizabeth and Norina, on their return to the United States from India, began to look around for the suitable spot for Meher Baba's center. The search spread over 3 long years, in which Norina and Elizabeth looked up and down the country as far west as California coast, but were unable to travel except on vacations. The chief difficulty was in finding virgin soil. Finally, they found a place that seemed to carry with it all the necessary qualifications, not on the west coast, as they had originally expected, but on the east coast, almost at their back door. When Elizabeth and Norina visited Elizabeth's father in Myrtle Beach in 1943, one of Baba's 5 conditions, more than ample water, triggered her memory of her visit 9 years earlier to the unspoiled forest land with its freshwater lakes north of the town area. To enable them to see the property, Mr. Chopin arranged for someone to drive them in a jeep along the beach at low tide. After a hurried look, they had to leave before the rising tide washed away their beach route home. Elizabeth then learned of an alternate route along the overgrown Old Kings Highway, and they gradually made their way through the dense underbrush to the top of a knoll overlooking the largest of the 7 lakes and the ocean beyond. After walking down the slope, they gazed out over the remarkably beautiful vista. Both Elizabeth and Norina felt at once that this site would be what Baba would like for his home in the West, and they saw the possibilities as carrying out his specified conditions. The next year, in 1944, 3 years after Elizabeth's return from India, Simeon Chapin, known to South Carolina for his unique foresight in the development of Myrtle Beach, made available to his daughter, Elizabeth Patterson, the large property on which the center is located, about 500 acres, together with the 2 lakes known as Long Lake and Gator Lake, located between US 17 and Atlantic Ocean. Talking of Gator Lake, there are actually alligators in the lake, right? They're visible. I mean, they keep showing up. The 2 lakes are fed by freshwater springs. An archaeologist has suggested that the unusual 7 lakes in that area were formed in prehistoric times by a meteor shower. This beautiful section was all virgin land, a primary condition as set by Baba.
So
Given from
can
the
I
heart.
read for a can I read for a page or
Sure,
so?
sure, of course.
Yeah, Baba.
Sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
Baba.
Baba.
By the way, is the
Given
mic capturing a lot of noise when I'm talking? There's a lot of people talking sometimes, and
no, it's okay.
is
It's
okay?
okay.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, Baba. Given from the heart, how did all this finally come about? Let us now trace the various steps and preparations that led to the final transference and gift of the property. The following account will show the development of Meher Baba Center at Myrtle Beach and of the great pioneer work undertaken by Elizabeth and Norina, together with the help of others, to make the center as it is today. In many instances, excerpts from letters written by Elizabeth to her family relating to the center are used to clarify certain points and facts. It is very interesting to glean from letters of Elizabeth to her father, Simon B. Chapin, how she prepared him for her interest in spiritual matters in relation to her life with Meher Baba in India. This was most necessary in one important aspect. Baba had laid down as one of the conditions from his center that it had to be given from the heart. Few people of wealth have devoted so much of it inconspicuously to religious and social purpose in Myrtle Beach and several other places where he lived, as did Simon Chapin. The land on which now stand the place of worship and religious communities in Myrtle Beach were in each instance given by Chapin and Borrow's families through the Myrtle Beach Farms Company. The need now was to interest Elizabeth's father in Mehr Baba's work. This was quite outside his ken. Had it not been for Elizabeth's continuing effort, persistence, and persuasion, the project might have fallen through, humanly speaking. Letters to her father, who was a man of action rather than words, remain unanswered, as it always true in work done for Baba. There is ever present this urge and haste to get the work completed quickly. Perhaps it is to counteract ever present Maya. It will be seen from these letters how tireless Elizabeth's efforts were, and with what speed, fanned by Norina's enthusiasm, she tried to bring this project about for Baba in the face of numerous difficulties and obstacles. Forward, forward was her watchword. Act now. Elizabeth prepared her father for the request of the land for helping him to understand Meher Baba's spiritual and humanitarian work, including how Baba trained his followers. Remember, most of us in those early days did not come to Baba with the full approval of our families and of those closest to us. It would be long story to relate the lack of understanding and difficulties encountered during the initial coming to Baba that many of us had to face. However, let us not call it sacrifice, for that word has no place in any of our relationships with Baba. When you do what you want to do, it is only joy. The following excerpts are from the correspondence that went on between Elizabeth and her father relating to the center. After her return from India, but before she received complete possession of the property and before the work was started to make the property suitable for Meher Baba's spiritual center. March 3, 1944. Dear Father, I want you to know how happy I am over the discovery of Long Lake, which is so beautiful. I would like to call it Lake Kashmir. Oh, this is a Kashmir reference here also. Okay. Mr. Moore, the builder, said he never knew there was anything around Myrtle Beach as beautiful or as high ground. Tomorrow, we ride through the beach and see the property as you suggested. Look at look at it in relation to the adjoining property. There should be a mile or more of good beach directly in front of Long Lake. Also, I will inquire again about the farming acreage as it is our purpose to eventually be self sustaining. You have no idea how I have looked here and there in California for such a layout, and isn't it wonderful to find it down in Myrtle Beach? I shall call it the center for the time being. Eventually, it will become an international humanitarian center dedicated to Meher Baba. The humanitarian side cannot develop until after the war, as I hope there someone will donate a hospital to the area and we have a real home for orphans of the war who must become the new humanity. For the for the time being, I hope to spend the whole month of June there. Maybe come down again before then, but live there in June and feel the development. Probably the Shaws and the Eatons, two couples of whom I spoke to you, can come down for 2 weeks each in June to be with Norina and myself, as it is bit isolated, and they may want to build houses. Everyone of our group who who comes will give something. The whole project is based on selfless service and giving. Should there be anyone who wants to own their own land, Then they can go to the Myrtle Beach Farms Company and see what is available nearby or elsewhere. The center itself will evolve gradually, and I know you will be pleased with its outcome. It is well to start now because it is virgin soil, and much cleaning will eventually have to be done. Although the work, although the woods are not so thick that it will take too much labor to clear gradually. The center must first be a farm. This is important because farms are favored by the government at this time, and the most beautiful thing we can do is to produce food during the war. Thus, it becomes useful to humanity in other directions. As I have said before, it can only develop after the war. There is nothing you could give me that I would like better than this center. In fact, you have no idea how much it means to me. It is wonderful that it should come at Myrtle Beach because if you offered me the same amount of land somewhere else, say near Pinehurst, it would not, I would not consider it, for it must be an all year round project. Jai Baba. There is a picture here uh, on the of a man. You can go further up on the earlier page. Yeah, so I'll read that what it is. There were only 5 family summer residences in 1911, where Simon B. Chapin came down from New York on a duck hunting trip. Being a man of foresight, he immediately recognized the unique potentialities of this broad strand and the evergreen forests with Myrtle Beach situated in the center of a long, crescent-shaped beach. Okay, so he bought the whole area in 1911. Okay, then we have this picture. The near cabin was also Frank Eaton's junior's hut, donated by him. It came from the Army Air Corps, Myrtle Beach, and the original building did not have a bath. Then there is another cabin picture donated by John Brass. It had only one room. John had stayed in the in it the early days. CP collection.
So, so
Yeah.
these are cabins that were set up elsewhere or were originally elsewhere and they were moved here. So they were donated and then they actually moved them either by demolishing it and re-putting it together or moved them, as a whole. It's interesting. I read about it only in that
Yeah.
book.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. Anybody else wants to read or Sanjay, you want to continue?
I'm good to continue if there is
Okay.
anybody else. Yeah. Okay, I'll read for one or two pages more. Yeah. In a
Sure.
letter dated March 8, 1944, Elizabeth wrote, in happily thinking over the land around Long Lake, I consider it advisable to have the surveyor, as soon as possible, find out the exact number of acres, taking it all the Long Lake back to the highway. Could he ascertain how much is suitable for farming and where it lies? Furthermore, look for a suitable place at either end of the Long Lake to run a road down to the beach. The beach is very separated from the building site unless there is a road going out to the beach that does not have to cross the marsh. I understand that lakes have never been accurately surveyed, and it would be advisable to have this done regarding Long Lake. I would like to know how much distance there is from one end of the Long Lake to the Springs property line, and how far the other end would be from the Gator Lake. Furthermore, if any road exists from Long Lake back to the highway, it would be good to rediscover it, for that would be best to use in making a permanent road into the property. There seem to be all grown roads crossing the property, overgrown roads crossing the property. After several letters when answered on March 22,
Went
1940,
unanswered. After
unanswered,
several, yeah, yeah.
yeah, on March 22, 1944, Elizabeth wrote an urgent letter to her father. He was a busy man. Yeah. I haven't heard a word from about Myrtle Beach since I left from Mr. Brian. If the house is started and the survey completed, how can we talk of acreage unless we know the number of acres in that particular tract? Please do this for me by phoning him at once. I do not want to arrive and find a status quo situation. A project of this kind must be kept going forward. Wow. She was a real project manager, actually. She was chasing the small things
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, yeah. That's
Chasing
a
her
project manager.
father.
Yeah, yeah. That's a real project manager job, actually.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I am very anxious that you see Mr. Don Burrows as soon as you can because I cannot take the full interest I would like in the land until the matter is set. Should evaluation have been made on the land, it is a good time now as real estate is low, judging by a few recent sales in that district. You may find an appraisal, you may find an appraisal is necessary from whatever angle you take over the land. And when this is done by an outside appraiser, it is of advantage to have it low, which can be done today and perhaps not tomorrow. Father, when we give when we give us as you have given so generously to the foundation, we should not be attached to results. I know these details are upsetting, but when we give from the heart, in the long run, it always comes out of the best. Perhaps not just as we plan it, but often through a shaking, often through, but often through a shaking up is better than we plan it. Because the motive for good, which started your foundations, is like the spring which comes from the earth. It eventually, sometimes with many a barrier, reaches its natural goal. So there is another picture down there in front view of the guest house. Porch and kitchen were added later. So this is the log house or guest house. It is so called here. Hmm. Mr. Chapin gave the land to Elizabeth. Elizabeth's sense of urgency was prescient. Simeon Brooks Chapin passed away in Jan 6, 1945. If the transfer of the land had not been taken place when it did, it is doubtful that it would have been happened at all. Wow. Elizabeth offers the center to Baba. On June 4, 1944, Elizabeth writes to Mayor Baba in India about the status of the effort to find the center and asking that he accept the land as a gift from the heart. Baba dear, you have received a number of cables from me about the property in South Carolina, which I hope you will accept as one of your spiritual centers in the United States. When I first cabled the land, When I first cabled, the land had been promised to me by father, but as it belonged to a company of which he is part owner called Myrtle Beach Farms Company, it took considerable time to be made available. In India, you would call it this land jungle, but according to a landscape gardener who was here once, there are 1,000 varieties of growth. There are long leaf pines, cypress, live oaks, cedar, gum trees, and, and an infinite number of shrubs and plants, including the palmetto, which is a short palm tree for which South Carolina is known as the palmetto state. There are no tall palms, as these grow further south in Florida. The land is completely uncultivated at present, but a large part of it is suitable for growing crops and vegetables. I am happy, so happy, that it is large enough and as acreage because any center you have must be able to take care of the hundreds who will come and go. The drawback at the present time is the communication with New York and elsewhere, as only freight trains come into Myrtle Beach and passengers get down at Wilmington, North Carolina, or Charleston, South Carolina, and have to motor 70 to 100 miles by bus or car to get here. However, we believe that after the war, there will be a good airplane service because there is a great facility now, but the government use, but for government use only. As there is a railroad track for freight, there could easily become an express passenger service when there is sufficient demand. There is a bus service to Myrtle Beach at present, but from New York, one has to change 2 or 3 times. Therefore, we take the train as aforesaid to Wilmington or Charleston and then motor down or up. I think it is only best to tell you of such drawbacks in a view of having a spiritual center here, but certainly anyone who wanted could come as the circumstances are at present. In fact, we are living at your center here now for the month of June, the Eatons, Darwin Shaw, Norina, and myself. When Darwin has to return to work, John Bass will come down. So they had a rota of being in that because the development was taking place.
Yeah, so actually, Darwin writes that he took a year or a year and a half off from his police duties,
Okay.
stayed at the center, and then went back to pick up his job. So interesting.
I remember
Right.
your having mentioned Myrtle Beach many times when we were in India, the possible stay of the group here. Should you go to the USA? And Norina and I plan to go down just when your timely letter came from Margaret, which you will remember, again mentioning Myrtle Beach. This was last February 1944, and we stayed at the house that father had meanwhile given to Kenneth and myself, adjoining his house there. So many times I had thought, why did father give me a house that was so nice in every way, except that it was not secluded enough to be useful to spiritual purposes or a meditative life? Being right on the beach over which anyone had the right to walk. Otherwise, it's large enough for a group of yours, having 9 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms, so forth. Besides, it was deeded to both Kenneth and me, and although he says he would never object to your use, his Christian science seems to separate him from any belief without that stamp, and naturally, that is a drawback to the situation. I might be for a stopover place. It might be for a stopover place, however, and useful as such. We five stayed there 3 days before we came to your center property, where we are now living for the month of June. And we have accumulated supplies, so forth, for our camp life in the woods. I cannot help but feel that you were behind it all, helping matters spiritually. Because so many circumstances came into the situation to facilitate the dividing up of the 1800 acres now, which could never have been worked out so easily if father had passed on, due to the complications of its partnership interest and the different heirs of his state later. However, it came out surprisingly better than anyone could anticipate. It is my one desire to give the property to you forever for your spiritual cause. How best to do it can be decided when you come. Father giving me the property involves a gift tax, which I would have to pay all in the same year. As I see it, the best is to have it in my name and I pay the land taxes, etc., until you come and decide how it can be most suitably done according to your purposes. In the meanwhile, I will leave it to you in a will for safety. You may be sure it will be given from the heart, as I am pleased to say that Father gave it to me from the heart and knows the fact that it will be used for your spiritual and humanitarian purposes eventually. It would be the dream of my life for you to have a great center here. I can only hope you find it useful for your universal cause. Your name, other than the center for Meher Baba, would be given it unless until you decide that too. Darwin and Frank are exploring the land today to find the highest spot where largest trees, which would be the best place for a great auditorium in the days to come when you speak. You speak, Jai Baba. Yesterday, we all went as far as we could around the large lake, Kashmir Lake, as they are long and narrow. And I understand have a channel between and remind me, and I understand have a channel between and remind me of them if we had a houseboat. However, there are no gardens unless we plant them. The reason I particularly thought of Kashmir is because I looked at the globe and followed the 34th line latitude around from Myrtle Beach and oh, and find that it is the same as Kashmir in India. Of of course, it
Interesting.
is that. Wow, wow, this is amazing. Of course, at it is Atlantic Ocean here and not the Himalayas in India, but merely will give you Eastern disciples an idea of where your center in America will be in relation to India. Jai
Sanjay,
Baba.
just allow me to say a thought, and it is not
Yes,
by
yes, please.
it's not by coincidence that we have two Kashmiris on this call and in the group.
Yeah, yeah. Goes without saying. Yeah, Shobji. Jai Baba.
Okay, Bob.
The first thing Norina and I did last February was to have two water wells dug and found water 15 feet down in one place and 21 feet in another. Also, we found springs on the property, so you may be sure there is plenty of water. Then then as soon as father promised me the land, we ordered a two-room house, a cabin on the hill, built with screened-in porch that we call your hut. A separate kitchen will be built near the lake, where you can see the lake and across the ocean. The land is not high in these parts along the coast, but this property has the highest land as it gets a good breeze. Norina and I stay in the hut we call yours, and the Eaton and John Brass have sent portable one room huts down. Darwin stays in John's hut as they are not here at the same time. For the first week, we have not left the property as we want to initiate it for you in our constant thought. We find a vast amount of work will have to be done in cleaning and underbrush because with virgin land there are many insects and crawling things like the first day of creation. Okay. But then they were said not to bite. Also, there are alligators of large size in the lakes, not crocodiles. And this long lake is said to be fisherman's paradise. We will only bathe in the ocean, which is about perfect and not annoy the alligators. We will have to see about a road being built down the ocean, although we could now cross the lake and then easily go over to ocean if one had a boat. In fact, it is suggested that a bridge be built across the narrow section of the long lake for easy access. But this we would not do until you came. Therefore, a small road down to the ocean is best for now. With farm labor shortage, we may not be able to do much cleaning for the present, we certainly will not cut down any big trees and spoil things that you may not be sure. It is important to live in the huts and merely feel out things. But something will have to be done before any members come here because it is all too primitive and jungle like at present, as no one has ever lived here before. Nature has complete sway over the place, and man from the city had to learn a lot. There were discomforts of insect bites because of so much underbrush. This is also due to wearing beach-like type of clothes that is too exposed for the woods life. And we are learning this the hard way, but take discomforts lightly. After the war, there are all kinds of possibilities of building and for having electric light and telephone installed at this convenience passes. As this convenience passes, passes along main highway that crosses our property. But at present, wires cannot be installed due to restrictions. So we use lanterns like at Mehrabad. Fortunately, we can still use cars to go and come, but with a small quota of rationed petrol. Mail, however, and milk are delivered if we put a box outside the main highway and buses run by, but we do not yet know the schedule. I mentioned this to show you the property. I mentioned this to show you the property is not inaccessible, although so secluded. It has great possibilities for development. Please write and let me know what you want us to do for most and your general idea about it all. Kindly tell me that you will make me happy by accepting this as soon as you come. In our every thought and deed, it is yours now. I have consulted with Norina and others. They agree that it is more practical and workable for me here to keep the title until you come, but leave it to you in a in a will meanwhile. With all my love to you and loving remembrances to all, devotedly yours, Elizabeth. Avtar Meher Baba ki Jai. There are a couple of pictures, Baba with
Yeah,
visitors at Myrtle Beach in
I think before
1968.
that there are pictures of uh, so this is the
Yeah, yeah,
barn.
yeah.
The barn
Yes.
also was moved, a building that was moved. The barn is the larger social gathering place, like she says
Mhm.
when Baba broke his silence. But yeah, this was more for gatherings. So
Yeah,
then
barns
this
are
is
typically
Baba's.
made in the agriculture farmhouses, right? Where they want to keep
Yes, yes. So
the
it's actually this.
produce,
Yeah, yeah. This
produce. Yeah.
particular barn was for not for agriculture produce, but actually for
Mm.
animals. So they had
Okay.
stalls. They had stalls for horses and pigs and so on.
Mm.
Those were removed, and so you have a larger communal space. But it's still called the barn, and it
Mm.
still retains its agrarian character when you go and see it. It's just painted and stuff inside. You can. It's just open. It's yeah. So this is the bedroom, Baba's bedroom, and this is Baba's bed today. This is Nausharwan's photograph. Okay. So the 9 bedrooms and baths and everything
Ah,
that she mentions in this letter is
yeah.
the Yopun Dunes property. It's the bungalow that
So that how far is
Baba-
that property from here?
I think it's, I don't know, let's check. Everything
Yeah.
is today a search away.
Mm. So
Right.
that was her father's house, right? The big house, 9 bedroom house.
Yes, they were living there.
Where
They were living there.
they first went and stayed there, and then made some kind of a tent type of accommodation here, and then they started staying here as the work was being done.
Correct,
That's what
correct,
it looks like. Yeah.
correct, correct. Oh, it's not on Google Maps. That's very strange.
Okay, must have been close by because that the whole area was his father's
So today Baba is
company
giving us a
property.
uh, those who like me have not gone, a glimpse of what Myrtle Beach is.
Those of us
Next year
who
we're
are
all
going
going,
to
no?
go next year. Yeah.
And those of us who are going
Yes.
this year. And
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
looking forward to going with all of you.
Yes.
So here you'll see this in a better way. So that's the center, and that's Highway 17, right? So you see 17 here. So that's Highway 17,
Mm.
and it's right on Highway 17 and
Wow.
goes up. This is the Long Pond. Google calls it Long Pond, but that's basically the Long Lake, right? And after that, that's the beach, that's the ocean, right? And that he says is, by the way, the same latitude, which is
That's
Kashmir.
And what is white pond swash? White point swash I saw near the
That's some. It's marked out there. I don't know what it is. It's not a Meher Baba reference. I think it's a private Google Maps reference. And then there are some photographs we can see, but there are no photographs. Okay.
You have to get a globe to see that the latitude from.
Yeah, you have to
No
look at the
latitude.
globe.
The latitude you can see here
You can
itself, right?
read the
So
latitude here and look
yes,
for
yes, you can.
Kashmir and then look for the latitude once again and see what it is saying.
True.
Something I learned today. Anyway,
Yes, sir.
Mm.
Okay, so we still have
So, so we'll finish this section. There are
yes,
just 1 minute to read more.
sure.
So, Meher Baba accepted the gift from the heart. In the summer of
One second.
1944, Elizabeth continued to update Baba about the progress of the work to development of center, to develop the center. On September 16, 1944, Baba sent the following cable to Elizabeth and Norina, confirming his approval of all that they were doing. I'm happy to find in all your letters about Myrtle Beach everything that I personally and spiritually approve of and sanction. All my lovers should cooperate to make Myrtle Beach the spiritual abode for one and all. Meher Baba. Wow.
So with that, we'll just see the other two photographs that we missed in the previous page. This is at the center in 1958, Shaw family collection. So that's again from Darwin Shaw. Baba walks through the center woods with Meherji and other visitors. You might have all seen these photographs in other places as well.
Yeah. I think there are
Uh,
videos also.
correct. Baba with Dr. Neelu in the woods at Myrtle Beach. Then there's the beach here. Baba with a group on the beach welcoming a visitor. Shaw family collection. Okay, so we still have 5 pages. A third of we have finished 2/3 of it, but a third of it is still there, so which we can take up maybe tomorrow. Yeah, but surprising things that we found out here. Kashmir, yeah, very nice. Anything else before we wrap up?
it was grand
Yeah.
tour. It was so, and the letters were
Uh,
very. I mean, very.
yes. And there is also one page read. If possible, we'll do it tomorrow. So it is not, I
Mhm.
have not digitized that. It's the letter written by Mani. Uh, when she goes to Myrtle Beach in 1950, she writes back to everybody,
Oh,
how
okay.
they reached and what happened. Her, it's like a travelogue actually. It's just one page.
Nice.
If possible,
Sure,
I'll just read it out without showing it
sure.
on the screen. Tomorrow. Yeah.
You can post it on Telegram.
No, no, no. I have to scan it and all that, which is
Yes.
today not possible. But
Okay.
very
Okay.
small. It's in the Glow. If you are getting Glow, it is there.
Okay.
Number two.
Okay. So, bye everybody. Have a good Saturday. And maybe tomorrow I need a volunteer to read because I might leave earlier than scheduled to Bangalore. So, I'll
Okay.
open the meeting and be on the call, but I'd like somebody to anchor it. Ashok ji or Sanjay ji, can you do it tomorrow?
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. We'll read this out. Uh,
Yes.
uh,
And that letter.
this yeah, and that letter, and I think
Yeah.
that should be done for tomorrow.
I should be on
Okay.
time.
Sure, sure. Okay. Look forward. Jai Baba.
You're always on time, Ashok.
Yeah, yeah, before time.
That's how you get to
Jai
read
Baba.
the messages of Baba. The status.
Absolutely.
Jai Baba. Jai Baba.
Jai
All the
Baba,
best. Jai
everybody.
Baba.
See you all
Bye,
Jai
everyone.
tomorrow.
Baba. Jai
And
Baba. Jai Baba.
Singapore and Kashmir.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.
Jai Baba.